Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Claire's surprise over the father's identity. It could not be long before Claire Newman finds out she is expecting. Unfortunately, since she is becoming so close to Holden Novak and his drinks, which she loves so much, this could lead to a who's the daddy question. Will Holden or Kyle Abbott be the owner of the child? Despite being aware that Claire has a boyfriend, Holden has been cheating on her since they first met. However, Holden has not been even slightly wary about it. Holden is now willing to assist Claire in caring for Audra Charles after introducing her to some really potent beverages. Holden might reverse the situation and try to win Claire over. Claire considers Holden to be merely a buddy and is not particularly worldly. Supporters have seen that Holden has a lot of diverse ideas and will probably try to get Claire to sleep with him. Claire's gullibility allows her to believe Holden's sober act. When Claire and Holden are together, they drink too much, and she might be convinced. Claire Newman feels distressed around Kyle Abbott. After Kyle withheld the truth from her about what transpired in France, Claire is furious with him. After Claire informed him that she needed time to consider their future together, Kyle decided to pop the question in the hopes that it would put things right. Claire questioned whether he was going to suggest a baby next, which was a gross misinterpretation of his idea. Even if Kyle intends to become a father once more soon, the authors are nonetheless prepared to write it. The quarrel between Claire and Kyle might have given away where their plot would go next. Will Claire find out she is pregnant and then cheat on Kyle? Will Claire be able to identify the father? It's possible that Claire will remain loyal to Kyle and tell Holden to stop. It is equally likely, though, that she will wind up in Holden's bed. Holden and Kyle are far more worldly than Claire. Claire doesn't want to ruin her first significant relationship. Kyle's failure to be honest with Claire has caused her more pain than he initially realized. To give Kyle a dose of his own medicine, Claire might choose to exact retribution and sleep with Holden. Rather than preventing her, Holden may use her intoxication. Claire might rush back to Kyle with a secret of her own after realizing what she has done. If Claire had an affair with Holden, will she tell Kyle the truth? Will Claire have to respond to a big baby daddy question? Claire Newman's world was about to take a turn she never saw coming, and the weight of it all pressed against her chest like an unseen burden that refused to ease, for in the quiet corners of her mind she had begun to sense the early whispers of a truth she wasn't ready to face. She might be pregnant, and the identity of the father was shrouded in uncertainty, a mystery tangled up in the lives of two very different men, Kyle Abbott, the man she had tried to trust despite his deceit, and Holden Novak, the dangerously charming companion who had slipped so easily into her nights of weakness. Though Claire had told herself repeatedly that Holden was nothing more than a friend, someone who provided distraction with his smooth words and potent drinks, the blurred boundaries between them made her question her own judgment, especially since Holden had been unashamed in his pursuit of her from the beginning, ignoring the fact that she was committed to Kyle and instead seizing every opportunity to insert himself into her life, whether through casual encounters, late-night confidences, or reckless escapades fueled by alcohol. And yet, what unsettled Claire most was not just Holden's relentless attention but her own complicity, her vulnerability to his intoxicating presence, her willingness to be swayed by the illusion of security he offered in those fleeting moments when the weight of her relationship with Kyle felt unbearable. Because Kyle, despite his devotion, had broken her trust in France by hiding details she needed to know, details that might have spared her months of doubt and suspicion, and when she had confronted him about it, hoping for clarity and honesty, Kyle had instead tried to patch their brokenness with a hasty marriage proposal, a gesture that struck Claire not as an act of love but as a desperate attempt to silence her questions, to bind her before she had fully processed what his secrecy had done to her, leading her to scoff at the suggestion, joking bitterly about whether he planned to propose a baby next as if their future could be sealed with a ring or a child. But what she hadn't anticipated was that her flippant remark would soon turn into a chilling possibility, one that left her lying awake at night with her mind replaying every choice she had made, every drink she had shared with Holden, every kiss she had hesitated to push away, every fight she had endured with Kyle, and every tender moment that seemed to dissolve under the pressure of lies and temptation. For Claire was not worldly in the ways Kyle and Holden were. She was still navigating the fragile terrain of her first real relationship, still learning what it meant to trust, to give herself wholly. And yet here she was on the brink of a revelation that could undo everything. A pregnancy that might tether her to one man or expose her to the betrayal of another. Holden, ever cunning, had positioned himself perfectly for such chaos, playing the role of confidant and enabler, encouraging her to let loose, to drink, to forget her worries, to escape the constant scrutiny of Kyle's expectations. And though Claire had wanted to believe Holden's company was harmless, the more she replayed their nights together, the less certain she was that nothing had happened, because Holden thrived on her naivety, taking advantage of her trust in his sobriety, guiding her into situations where her judgment was clouded and her defenses were lowered. And if in her heart she still believed she had not crossed a line with him, her body now whispered otherwise, the possibility of life growing within her body taunting her with the cruelest question of all. Who is the father? A question that threatened to destroy the fragile foundation of her relationship with Kyle and shatter whatever innocence she still clung to. For Kyle had been her anchor, the first man she dared to love deeply, yet his lies had left cracks that Holden was only too eager to pry apart, and Claire, caught in the middle, felt as if her choices were no longer her own, as if fate itself was pushing her toward a reckoning she wasn't ready to endure. Because no matter how much she wanted to believe she could stay loyal to Kyle, to confess her confusion and let him guide her through this storm, another part of her whispered of retribution, of the desire to hurt him the way he had hurt her, of the temptation to fall into Holden's arms not out of love but out of spite, to give him a taste of betrayal so that he might understand the hollow ache of being deceived. Yet even if she did, what would become of her then? For Holden, unlike Kyle, wasn't the type to commit, he was the type to chase, to conquer, to intoxicate, and then to vanish, leaving Claire with nothing but the consequences of her choices. And if those consequences included a child, would Holden even stand by her? Or would he relish the chance to disrupt her bond with Kyle and then abandon her once she had chosen him over the life she had wanted? And so Claire was left spinning in uncertainty, her mind a battlefield of loyalty, betrayal, guilt, and longing, wondering if she could ever confess the truth to Kyle, if she could ever admit that while she accused him of secrecy, she herself might be harboring the biggest secret of all. And in the end, when the moment of truth arrived, when the test strip confirmed what her body already knew, Claire stood in the bathroom clutching it in trembling hands, her reflection in the mirror a stranger, her heart racing as she whispered into the silence, "Who's the father?" Knowing that whether she revealed the truth or buried it deep, the revelation would send shockwaves through her world, because Kyle Abbott and Holden Novak, two men so different and yet so entwined in her fate, would each have a claim to her future. And Claire, caught in the cruel twist of fate's design, would soon discover that love, loyalty, and betrayal are never as simple as they seem, especially when an unborn child may carry the answer to a question she never wanted to ask but could no longer avoid. Claire's trembling fingers clutched the pregnancy test like it was both a weapon and a curse, her knuckles white as she sank onto the edge of her bed, staring at the faint but undeniable line that altered everything. She had thought she had more time before life demanded such choices, more time to figure out who she was apart from the chaos that seemed to swirl endlessly around the Newman and Abbott families, but fate rarely afforded that kind of luxury, and now she was caught in a storm of her own making, her mind unraveling the tangled threads of Kyle's devotion and deceit against Holden's relentless pursuit and dangerous charm, until the question became not just about who the father was but about who she was becoming in the process, because deep down, Claire feared that this wasn't only about biology or DNA. It was about love, loyalty, vengeance, and the unsteady ground on which she stood. She pressed her hand against her abdomen, not yet able to feel the life that might be forming inside but already aware of its presence, already aware of the seismic shift it brought. And in that moment she wished she could turn back time, wished she had pushed Holden away when his hands lingered too long or when his laughter echoed too close to her ear. Wished she had walked away from Kyle the moment she realized his truths came wrapped in silence and manipulation, but regrets offered no solace. Now, not when her future was as uncertain as the test she had just taken. Her first instinct was to call Kyle, to confess everything, to let him hold her while she cried into his chest and beg him to promise that they could make it work. But as her finger hovered over his name in her phone, a flash of their argument in France played in her mind. The way he had avoided her questions, the way he had hidden the truth until she stumbled onto it herself, the way his proposal had felt like a patchwork solution rather than an act of love. And suddenly the words lodged in her throat, Because what if Kyle asked the same question she was asking herself? What if the baby isn't mine? That fear was enough to make her drop the phone onto the bed and curl into herself, tears sliding down her cheeks as the silence of the room pressed in. She thought of Holden then, of his sly grin, of the way he always managed to appear when she was at her weakest, of the nights they drank until the edges of her memories blurred. Had she truly crossed the line with him, or had he only let her believe she had? Because Holden thrived on suggestion, on letting the imagination fill in the blanks, and Claire, so naive in comparison, was never quite sure what had actually happened and what had only been implied, and if Holden had crossed that line with her while she was too drunk to know, then she was not only carrying uncertainty, she was carrying betrayal, trauma wrapped in confusion, a secret that could shatter her even before Kyle found out. The days that followed were a blur of nausea and exhaustion, both from the pregnancy and the weight of her secret, as Claire tried to maintain a facade of normalcy around everyone else. Sharon, ever perceptive, noticed her distracted glances and the way she pushed her coffee away at crimson lights, but Claire brushed it off with vague excuses, unwilling to admit the truth to anyone until she herself could make sense of it. Yet the harder she tried to hide it, the more it seemed to consume her. Each word from Kyle felt heavier, each joke from Holden cut deeper, each glance from Audra Charles, who always seemed to be lurking nearby with her sharp tongue and sharper eyes, made Claire feel exposed, as if the world already knew what she was trying desperately to conceal. And Holden, perceptive in his own manipulative way, began to notice the shift in her, the way she avoided his gaze, the way she seemed jumpier whenever he was around, and rather than back away, he leaned in, cornering her at society one evening with that smug half-smile. "You've been avoiding me," Holden murmured, his tone teasing but his eyes sharp with calculation. "What's the matter, Claire? Afraid your boyfriend will find out you've been spending time with me?" The words hit like a slap, and Claire's cheeks burned, though she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You've had your fun, Holden. Whatever you think happened, it didn't. I love Kyle." "Do you?" he countered smoothly, sipping his drink with deliberate slowness. "Because the way I remember it, you didn't seem too concerned about Kyle when you were with me. Or maybe you just don't remember it clearly, which is even better." His voice dropped lower, just enough to make her stomach twist. "You trust me to fill in the blanks, don't you?" Her heart hammered, because Holden's words weren't just insinuation. They were weaponized memory, twisting her own doubt against her, leaving her questioning herself all over again. Did she willingly cross the line? Or had Holden taken advantage when she was too far gone to know? The uncertainty was unbearable, and Holden's smugness only made it worse. "Stop it," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't want to hear any more." But Holden only smiled wider. "You'll want to hear it soon enough. Especially when you realize you might be carrying something that belongs to me." Claire's breath caught, her entire body going cold, because his words sliced through the fragile barrier she had tried to build around herself. He knew. Somehow, Holden knew, or at least suspected, and now he was dangling it in front of her like bait. That night, Claire sat alone in her apartment, replaying the conversation until her head throbbed. Holden's manipulation was unbearable, but so was the thought of Kyle finding out from anyone other than her. She imagined Kyle's face if he discovered she had hidden this from him, imagined the devastation in his eyes, and it nearly broke her. But she also imagined his anger, his accusations, his inability to trust her again if he believed there was even a chance the baby wasn't his, and the fear paralyzed her into silence. When Kyle stopped by the next day, flowers in hand and apologies on his lips, Claire nearly broke then and there. "I know I've messed up," he said, his voice thick with sincerity as he placed the bouquet on the table. "But I love you, Claire. I don't want to lose you. Whatever it takes, we can work through it. I want a life with you, a family with you." The word family echoed in her ears, and she fought the urge to tell him right then, but the words stuck in her throat. How could she confess when she didn't even know the truth herself? How could she risk losing him before she had answers? Instead, she simply nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, and whispered, "I need time." Kyle accepted it with a pained expression, kissing her forehead before leaving, but the guilt nearly crushed her once the door closed. She wanted to believe Kyle was the father. She wanted to believe their love could withstand anything. But Holden's shadow loomed larger with every passing day, whispering doubts into her mind, pushing her closer to a breaking point. And then came the doctor's appointment. Sitting in the sterile room, Claire clutched the edge of the exam table as the physician confirmed what she already knew. She was indeed pregnant, and the timeline left the paternity ambiguous. It could be Kyle's, but it could just as easily be Holden's. The words left Claire's stomach hollow, her worst fears realized, and though the doctor offered reassurance about paternity testing later, it did little to ease the storm raging inside her. By the time she left the office, Claire felt like the walls of her world were closing in. She couldn't keep this secret forever. She couldn't let Holden keep playing his games unchecked. She needed to decide who to trust, and who to fear. As she walked through Chancellor Park that evening, lost in thought, Holden appeared once again, as if summoned by her turmoil. "Rough day?" he asked casually, sliding onto the bench beside her. "Go away, Holden," Claire muttered, too drained to argue. But he didn't move. "You know, you can keep pushing me away, but it won't change the truth. You're carrying something that could be mine. And when Kyle finds out, well, let's just say I'll be right here waiting to pick up the pieces." Claire turned to him, fury flashing in her eyes for the first time. "You don't get to decide my life, Holden. You don't get to twist this into something it's not. If you think for 1 second I'll let you destroy what I have with Kyle, you're wrong." Holden only smirked, leaning closer. "We'll see about that. Secrets don't stay buried forever, Claire. And when yours comes out, I'll be the one holding the shovel." Her heart pounded as she stood abruptly, storming away before he could see the tears threatening to fall. Because deep down, she knew he was right. Secrets had a way of surfacing, and this one would soon explode, tearing her world apart in ways she couldn't yet imagine. And so the stage was set. Claire, caught between two men, a secret she couldn't confess, and a child whose very existence could alter the balance of power in Genoa City. The question of who's the father loomed larger than ever, and though she longed for clarity, she knew that when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just change her life, it would ignite a firestorm that could consume everyone she loved. The silence in Claire's apartment had grown unbearable. Every ticking second on the wall clock seemed to mock her hesitation, whispering that time was slipping away and the secret she carried would not remain hidden forever. She paced the living room with her arms wrapped protectively around her stomach, though there was little to show yet, just the faintest swell that only she could notice. The truth was swelling too, pressing against her ribs, demanding release. Kyle had been calling her relentlessly, leaving messages filled with worry and affection. He deserved answers. He deserved to know. But the thought of his face when she told him, the shock, the questions, the potential rejection, made her knees weak. Still, she knew this couldn't wait any longer. She finally dialed his number, her fingers trembling as she hit call. Kyle's voice came through quickly, hopeful and nervous all at once. "Claire. Thank God. I was starting to think you didn't want to talk to me anymore." "I need to see you," she said softly, her throat tight. "In person. Tonight." Within the hour, Kyle was at her door, his eyes searching her face with an intensity that nearly undid her resolve. He stepped inside, setting his keys on the counter, and waited. Claire gestured toward the couch, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in her chest. She sat across from him, wringing her hands together until her knuckles ached. "Kyle," she began, her voice shaking, "I've been keeping something from you. Something important. And before you say anything, I need you to listen." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay, I'm listening." She inhaled shakily. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, impossible to take back. Kyle's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat as he leaned back against the couch. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corners of his lips, tentative at first, then more certain. "Claire, that's..." He reached for her hand, his voice thick with emotion. "That's incredible. I mean, it's a lot, but it's us. It's our future. We can make this work." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes as she squeezed his hand, wishing desperately that she could stop there, that she could bask in his joy and let it heal all the cracks between them. But the guilt was too heavy. Her chest constricted with the weight of what she hadn't said, of what Holden had whispered into her mind. "There's more," she admitted, her voice breaking. Kyle froze, his hand tightening around hers. What do you mean, more? His tone was sharper now, anxiety creeping in. Claire forced herself to meet his eyes. The timing isn't clear. I don't know for sure if the baby is yours. The words shattered the fragile joy in his expression, his face hardening as his hand slipped from hers. What are you saying, Claire? Who else could it be? She swallowed hard, her vision blurring with tears. Holden. The name was like gasoline on fire. Kyle shot to his feet, his expression a mix of rage and disbelief. Holden Novak? Are you kidding me? That smug, manipulative. Claire, how could you let him near you like that? I didn't let him, she cried, standing too, her voice raw. It wasn't like that. We drank too much, he blurred the lines. I don't even know if anything happened, Kyle. I swear, I never meant for this. Kyle's hands raked through his hair as he turned away, pacing furiously. You don't know? Either you slept with him or you didn't. How can you not know?